by Zach Johnson. Aaron Rodgers officially signing his new contract with the Green Bay Packers, the terms being a 3-year deal for $150 million with 2 voidable years. Rodgers will earn close to $42 million this season, with a new contract kicking in next season. The 49ers signing former Kansas City Chiefs cornerback Charvarius Ward. It's a 3-year deal that could be worth $42 million, with $26.7 million guaranteed. The 25-year-old has made 53 starts in 4 years. Former Saints safety Marcus Williams has agreed to a 5-year, $70 million contract with the Baltimore Ravens, with $37 million guaranteed. Williams has been a full-time starter with the Saints since being a second-round pick back in 2017, while the New York Jets have filled 2 needs in the secondary, inking former Seahawks cornerback DJ Reed. It's a 3-year, $30 million contract, while signing former Buccaneers safety Jordan Whitehead. That's for 2 years, $14.5 million. Defensive end Randy Gregory with a very strange day today. He decides to sign with the Denver Broncos, agreeing to a 5-year, $70 million contract with $28 million guaranteed. Here's the weird part. Only hours before agreeing to that deal, he agreed to the same terms to remain with the Dallas Cowboys before he backed out. I'm Dan Schwartzman. That's your Bloomberg World Sports Update. Rashad.
All right, thank you very much indeed for that, Dan. We are looking, of course, at the Open across Asia after a day where we saw some gains in the U.S., and hopefully that could actually reverse some of the losses that we saw in the session yesterday, with the Hang Seng having a torrid time of it, falling to levels not seen since 2016. We've got stocks in Hong Kong and mainland China could well see a bit of stabilization. We saw the S&P 500 go up. That should support the broader Asia equity markets. We saw the Nasdaq Golden Dragon China Index bounce. That also perhaps bodes well for the upcoming session. This is Bloomberg.
Breaking news first. War in Ukraine. The U.S. has warned China about any support for Russia's invasion.
Vladimir Putin has faced more setbacks than he expected in the war with Ukraine.
The biggest refugee flow we've seen in Europe since World War II.
The war in Ukraine will have a big impact on the economies of all 50 states.
The Kremlin saying this: the fact Ukraine talks are continuing is positive.
For the latest headlines and the effect on the market, stay with Bloomberg 1130, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
When you subscribe to Bloomberg, you will get more than news. You will get inspiration to disrupt the status quo. You will get insight into limitless possibilities. You will get ideas to feed your ambition. You will discover new solutions and turn data into action. So before you invent, pioneer, disrupt. Before you change the world, Bloomberg. Learn more at Bloomberg.com/youwill.
Is it time to pivot? Commonwealth Financial Network can help you recognize when you've reached an inflection point in your business. Whether you're a solo practice that's slightly overextended or a multi-advisor firm looking to improve integration. For more than 40 years, we've provided advisors the support they need to position themselves for continued growth and success. Visit Commonwealth.com today and propel your business forward. Commonwealth Financial Network, member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
Cyber technology and environmental engineering are 2 of the most complex problems facing mankind today. New Jersey Institute of Technology and Ben-Gurion University of Israel are joining forces to establish the Institute for Future Technologies. Both universities share a dedication and commitment to solving some of the world's global challenges. The collaboration includes research and development, joint degree programs, innovation and entrepreneurship, and student exchange experiences. Through this partnership, BGU and NJIT will create new technologies and technologists who will have a major impact on everyday life. Craig Gottsman, Dean of NJIT's Yingwu College of Computing, noted,
"The global challenges of the past few years have proven that computing and cyber technologies are now more important than ever before."
For more information about the Institute for Future Technologies, STEM education, and real-world innovation, visit futuretechnologies.njit.edu.
Dear Calvary Hospital, it was April at the height of the pandemic. I was alone, caring for my dying mom. If I brought her to a hospital, I couldn't stay with her, and every doctor and nurse simply refused to come into our house. That is, until Calvary Hospice came and rescued us. Nurse Kelly immediately assessed Mom and guided me through every step on bringing her back to being comfortable and pain-free, physically and mentally. She was accessible 24/7 as we FaceTimed day and night. I was never concerned about Mom's safety. 8 days later, Mom passed on with dignity and grace, thanks to an angel called Nurse Kelly and a miraculous place called Calvary. Sincerely, Angela Calabrese.
This is Frank Calamari, president of Calvary Hospital. During this time, be assured that Calvary continues to provide the safest and healthiest environment for our staff, our patients, and their families.
The Audi Q5 represents everything we've learned from building one of the world's most progressive vehicles. With forward-thinking technology like standard rear cross traffic assist, this car was born to non-conform. The Audi Q5 is here. Progress is never blending in.
Don't let someone else drive off in the Audi model you've always wanted. Visit your tri-state area Audi dealer to get behind the wheel of yours today. Or visit AudiOffers.com for more information.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg Terminal, sharing ideas, negotiating trade, and forming an influential network that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Bloomberg.com/professional.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, 45 past the hour. We had strength in U.S. equities today. Details coming up.
Now, Bloomberg traffic and weather. You've got a closure of the Clearview northbound coming in by the LIE. This is all because of a car fire, and so delays right now building back from 73rd Avenue. The Deegan's still a heavy ride right now. They've reopened the southbound side of Yankee Stadium, still dealing with a flipped-over truck. 2 lanes remain blocked. It's an hour down from the 230s. Northbound equally slow through the area. A heavy ride still both sides of Manhattan for the ride up to the bridge. Holland Tunnel, 20 minutes to get out. 10 minutes in from 1 to 9, 30 minutes out, 10 minutes in over at the Lincoln Tunnel. And not too bad once you do get yourself finally to the George Washington Bridge. Now traveling up in Fishkill, an accident 9 southbound by Rapidsy Road. And delays there of at least 10 minutes in the area. Sports Nets visit Orlando. Islanders there in Washington. Rangers host Anaheim. Devils, they skate in Vancouver. Bloomberg 11:30, 3-day weather. Tonight, partly cloudy, 45. Wednesday, sunny and 65. Thursday, a few morning showers, high near 60. And Friday, sunny skies, high of 70. 58 degrees, clear in New York. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. With Indeed, you can attract, screen, and interview candidates all from one place. Visit Indeed.com/credit. With the best ride in and out of the city, I'm Ed Kalegi, and this is Bloomberg 11:30, bringing you global news 24 hours a day.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
We had a rally in U.S. equities today. The question is whether this is a one-day wonder. You'll remember yesterday's weakness. Today, we heard from Bloomberg equity strategist Gina Martin-Adams. She was saying she kind of doubts the market put in a bottom yesterday. We had crude oil to contend with. WTI in New York tumbled. There seems to be a higher probability of Iranian crude coming back to market. That was after Russia's foreign minister said he supports renewing the Iran nuclear deal. We also have to contend with the lockdowns in China. They have the potential to slow petroleum demand quite a bit. China is the world's largest importer of crude. In the last week, WTI is down 20%. Today alone, we weakened by more than 6% in New York trading, and right now we are weaker by another 1% or so, 95.60 in the active contract. In the equity space, we had energy producers sinking with the S&P 500 Energy Group down 3.7%. Airlines benefited from cheaper oil prices. The S&P 500 airline sub-index was up more than 7% today, and we had a rally in information tech. NASDAQ Composite jumping 2.9%. In the broader market, the S&P was higher by a little more than 2% today, and the Dow, for its part, was up about 1.8%. Now, it's also possible that some of the market positivity correlated with this change in sentiment as it related to Chinese shares listed here in the U.S. Yesterday in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng was down at a 6-year low, dropping 5.7%. But today, in the U.S. session, the NASDAQ Golden Dragon Index was up 5%, and the Crane shares CSI China Internet Fund jumped 5% as well. Whether or not it's too soon to call a market bottom in Hong Kong, we'll have to wait and see. The yield curve, a little more slope today. We have got a 10-year Treasury at 214, a 2-year at 184. That gives us 30 basis points in that 2 to 10 spread. Of course, tomorrow is the Fed meeting. We'll get the Australian equity market up and running at the top of the hour. Looks like the ASX 200 could be up by about 0.6%. More on markets in 15 minutes. Ed Baxter now with a look at global news headlines. He's in the Bloomberg newsroom in San Francisco. Ed.
All right, thank you, Douglas. U.S. President Joe Biden reportedly will announce $1 billion in new military aid to Ukraine tomorrow. This is a Wall Street Journal report to this point. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called an extraordinary meeting of all NATO nations for next week. U.S. President Joe Biden will attend. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky has spoken before Canada's Parliament today and U.S. Congress tomorrow. Ceasefire talks have resumed between Russia and Ukraine. Putin saying Kyiv is not serious in the talks. Russia formally exits the Council of Europe just before a vote to expel it. Russia's imposed sanctions on President Biden and Secretary of State Blinken and Defense Secretary Austin. A Fox News cameraman has been killed in Ukraine. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg is warning China not to interfere with sanctions on Russia. Pfizer and BioNTech seeking FDA authorization for an additional booster. This on the heels of it asking the EU to add a fourth shot to those over 65. Taiwan's COVID-0 policy has worked in putting down the latest surge. No reported cases on the last report. Quarantine at the border and contact tracing, forced isolation. And the White House says funding for COVID mitigation tools is running out in June. One more by unanimous voice vote. The U.S. Senate has passed a bill that will make daylight saving time permanent. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg. Brian?
Ed, thank you. 10 minutes here before the top of the hour. It's time for the Daybreak Asia Media and Tea Leaves Review, where we take a look at some of Asia's top stories in leading newspapers and on media websites. From the Wall Street Journal, just a quick headline. President Biden will announce $1 billion in new military aid to Ukraine on Wednesday. From the South China Morning Post, after the war in Ukraine, more Taiwanese are willing to fight for the island. That's according to the latest survey. This upswing in public support to defend Taiwan is being linked to the suffering from Russia's invasion. The government also appears to have more popular backing now for changes to reservist training and also to mandatory military service. And also in the Post, the U.S. has banned the import of all of China's Li-Ning products. Li-Ning is a prominent sportswear maker, and it's because of the alleged use of North Korean labor. The sportswear giant supply chain is accused of having some ties there. That would be a violation of U.S. sanctions. Li-Ning goods will not be allowed into the U.S. unless the importer provides clear and convincing evidence that no forced labor was involved in its manufacture. And one note that's not from the outside media, but it is a debate that I think would be a lot of fun to have, and it's an opinion piece by our own Shuli Ren. And she says Xi Jinping doesn't care if China is uninvestable. I'd like to take the other side of that argument. All right, that is a look at the media. Rashad, to you.
All right, indeed. Let's get to our next guest. We are talking about a potential default in Russia, and it could cost investors billions and shut the country out of most funding markets. Joining us now to discuss all this is Sydney Mackey, Bloomberg Global Markets reporter. Sydney, thank you for joining us. Give us an idea of the scale of the problem and indeed how it could have repercussions.
Absolutely. So Russia has $117 million due in sovereign government debt coupons on Wednesday. That's not a huge payment, but they do have about $40 billion overall in government bonds. And so failure to pay this coupon within the 30-day grace period could end up triggering cross-default clauses where investors can accelerate their ask for repayment of the bond and trigger a very large $40 billion default.
President Putin signed a decree that would allow companies, I know this is in the credits here, but companies to pay back debt in rubles. Gazprom didn't do it, but I wonder about other companies. What are you hearing on that side?
Yeah, so as we understand it at this point, unless sanctions change or Russia feels that it is able to get the dollars it needs to make payment, even this government bond payment coming due on Wednesday may be paid in rubles. Of course, we'll have to wait and see, and the large debate there ends up being whether ruble repayment constitutes a default. For this specific bond, it would.
Right turn.
Absolutely, because they are locked out of the dollar market. This is the key here. But give us a sense about a default, and indeed what would be the impact. Particularly, we've seen them default before. I think it was 1998 when Russia defaulted on, I think, ruble debt, and then we had Argentina, of course, a couple of years later after that. So give us a sense of how we can learn from that.
Yeah, of course. So you're completely right that the 1998 default ended up being on local currency bonds. So this would be Russia's first foreign default since the 1917 revolution. So the first default in more than a century, and it could have huge repercussions. Of course, it would lock Russia out of global bond markets until a default is remedied, which would be extremely challenging to renegotiate the debt given sanctions and some of the complications that investors are already facing with those bonds.
If Russia doesn't make the debt payments, there's a 30-day grace period. What happens during those 30 days?
So during that period, all eyes will be on any update from Russia in terms of whether they're able to get the dollars to make the payment.
South Street.
We heard from Fitch Ratings today that at the end of the 30-day period, failure to pay the dollar coupons in U.S. dollars would end up being a default, though we're not sure that we would have formal default declarations during that period.
Sydney, who's most exposed to this debt?
Turn at the end of the road.
So there's a handful of firms that we've seen get hit by the exposure. BlackRock, PIMCO, Ashmore have recently been increasing their holdings.